So first of all, a question for you people. We are now in 2019. What do you expect in 2019 from your marketing automation tools?
Seamless integration.
So you want seamless integration, great. Actually, seamless integration between what and what?
Yeah, everything pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, CRM, automation, your data, your contact center interface,
Prospecting.
third-party tools, yeah, social.
Yep, okay. You got anything to add to that since you're the same organisation? Or?
I was just going to say, like, right from a customer in an awareness phase, prospecting, right through to retention and reducing churn.
Yes. Okay. You two at the back from a different type of organisation. What do you want in 2019 from your marketing automation?
I'd still agree. It'd be the integration component, but also maybe leveraging other tools that platforms provide us that we're not at the moment doing or leveraging. And I guess it's the insight piece. So for us, you know, what's available to provide or give us that BI over all the marketing activity that we're doing today rather than the still the manual process.
Great. You got anything? So you're both from Nexon, aren't you?
Yeah.
So have you got anything to add to that?
Seeing the same thing.
Okay.
Same challenges.
Yeah, I just thought
Yeah.
different brains, different opinions maybe, but that's fine. Nina?
Intuitive interface and good reporting tools. So with the email automation we're using at the moment, we have quite a few accidents happening because emails are being sent to the wrong people.
Oops.
Because of wrong queries. So it's highly complicated at the moment. It would be nice if it would be much more straightforward to use. So.
Awesome. Ronan?
I guess it's just leveraging other technologies, like not reusing those that are already existing. So we have a lot of technologies in AI, machine learning, or NLP, and just, yeah, as what he said, just better interface to those already existing technologies and leverage those so we could reuse the same for your own marketing automations.
Excellent, thank you. And Praveen, you don't escape. So 2019, what do you need from marketing automation, or what do the people you know need from marketing automation?
I guess really reducing the, making the cost getting the metrics right to evaluate costs and making sure it actually is getting the ROI that you're after. Because there are options out there. One of the main concerns is what is the cost involved with the various
Okay, great. So even in this fairly small group, we've got quite a diverse set of requirements. Back in the beginning of Microsoft CRM, as it was called then, this is what it looked like. And what we had was everything but marketing. So the early part, or the first release of Microsoft CRM, which was now 16 years ago, there was no marketing. It was a CRM solution and it did not have any marketing in it. Now some of you might be thinking, that's weird. In actual fact, if you compared Microsoft CRM to the other technologies that were also calling themselves CRM solutions back in 2003, you would have found much the same result. That Microsoft CRM and CRM as it was back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, was all about customer management of the current customers and the people who we're getting pretty close to being a customer. So they're still a prospect right now, but they're well and truly interacting with us. But as I think everyone in this room will know, there is a lot of work required to convert these suspects into customers. And we have quite a long and arduous process. Microsoft CRM, as it was, really helps very little with that process. Dynamics 365, which is the current version, has certainly improved, but it hasn't got anywhere close to the top of that funnel. It is quite common, even today, to see organisations who've got their CRM solution and they've got a marketing automation solution of some sort, and between the two there is what I call a big valley. And one of the big challenges that they face is getting the information from the marketing automation into the CRM tool, or from CRM back into the marketing automation tool to kick off some further campaign. So this slide is just going to run through what we typically call the people right from the top of that funnel all the way down. And obviously, as you get lower down, there is more probability of somebody buying from you. It is very common to have, with some of these layers, a 1 to easily 1 to 10, and not uncommonly 1 to 100 or even 1 to 1,000 of a ratio between one layer and the next layer down. And I probably should be saying that the other way round, because obviously we're getting fewer as we go down the funnel. But if you do the maths, you will know, or you will see, that you need an awful lot of people going into the top of that funnel in order to get any out of the bottom. And most CRM solutions, true CRM as in sales, customer service and so on, solutions, don't help you with that lot at all. Many prospects, in fact, are over halfway through the timeline of this process before they reach out to a company at all. You will see various numbers bandied around, but I've read a number of different articles that quote 57%, 58% through the timeline from that first realization of I've got a problem through to thank you very much, here's some dollars for solving that problem. So they are 58% of the way through that timeline. So if it was a 100-day sales cycle, for example, they're 58 days in before they even reach out at the most basic level to engage with an organization. At that basic level, we're probably talking only an interaction with a website, although it's not just going to be looking at a website, it is probably a little bit further on where they've gone to a landing page and they have given over some details that you can then use to follow up. But they're still quite a long way from actively engaging with you and therefore becoming a customer. Now, marketing automation helps you up at this top end of the funnel. So all of this pale green is where marketing automation kicks in. So there is none of that in most CRM solutions, but there is a lot of it in marketing automation tools, including ClickDimensions. What we need marketing automation to do for us is to help us with brand awareness, to generate interest in our solution, and push those prospects into consideration of our solution versus the competitors. Any questions so far of what I've looked at?
Why does marketing automation only cover the top? And not the whole thing?
Because down here, for many organisations, it is the sales department that have kicked in. Now, there may be some automation, but typically, particularly in a B2B,
Yeah.
it is harder to do the automation down here because at that level, you're talking very much about the prospect and their own problems. Now, it is getting more and more blurred, I agree with you. But most organisations are happy to have more personalised and one-on-one interaction once people get down into that yellow-orange part of the funnel, because they are much more likely to buy from you. So usually once they're down here, they will have spent a reasonable amount of time on your website, they've probably downloaded some brochures, they've self-selected to a degree, and it gets to the point where the organisation probably wants to talk to that person on a one-on-one and start having a, okay, Mr. Mrs. Prospect, your situation is, this is how we could help you solve your problems, whereas you couldn't possibly do that up top. Having said that, that's not to say that there isn't some automation down here, but in general, it's probably not what's called marketing automation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, but for example, we're in banking, and we do a lot of automation, particularly at the onboarding stage, and
Yes, that's one of my
then, yeah, like
examples.
through the, the
Mm.
90-day kind of activation cycle. So yeah, we use it quite a lot because in banking, you're lucky there's a lot of data which can trigger a lot of communication, and you can do all that.
We're the sales department, essentially.
Yeah, we're essentially sales, but yeah, we do a lot of automation to guide customers through the.
Yeah, and what you have just suggested is actually one of the case studies that I'm going to touch on later on. It's probably a little bit blurred, and certainly you can use some of the marketing automation tools to help you with the more sales process, but I think official definitions do keep the marketing automation up at the top of the funnel, and it's more sort of sales automation once we get down towards the bottom of the funnel. And then right down at the bottom, as it says, we've got customers and clients, but that doesn't mean that we're not further marketing to them, that we're not upselling or doing further work, which yes, maybe quite likely a marketing automation tool could help you. Okay, you probably recognise this, and if you are using Microsoft Dynamics 365, which is one of about 400 CRM technologies, ClickDimensions is ideal as the bridge between sales and marketing automation. And I say that because it is a multi-channel marketing automation platform. I will go into what it offers a little bit later on, but it really does give you that full breadth and lets you communicate with people right from the top of the funnel, or from the first point where it is feasible to communicate with them. This slide shows you what Microsoft Dynamics 365 looks like if you don't have ClickDimensions or one of the competitors, but I'm focusing on ClickDimensions when you go into marketing. So you can see what we have got is just a relatively small amount of functionality, and it is functionality that does fit lower down the funnel. So it only helps us from what are called marketing qualified leads, which on my funnel diagram was the bottom of the greenish colour, down. That's the only support that you get even now within the sales component of Dynamics 365. However, once you add ClickDimensions, you get all of this extra functionality. And a lot of what you are seeing there is functionality that helps you up at the top of the funnel. So if you look, we've got details of anonymous visitors to the website. So ClickDimensions helps you with people who come to your website at the point when all you know about them is their IP address and possibly who or what referred them to your website. We've got page views, which is a little bit lower down. So that's individual pages that people looked at. So of the whole of your website, which pages are generating interest? ClickDimensions will answer that for you. And then of course you can slice and dice it in other ways.
So how does it get that data? Like, does it connect with Google Analytics, or do you put a pixel on that page, or?
It's neither of those. It's actually called a tracking token. So part of the installation of ClickDimensions, you generate a token, and then you put that token, either you can put it into the overall footer of the website, which then puts it onto every page, or you can be more specific, and if you decide there's a lot of pages on your website that you're not interested in, but there's just a few that you are interested in, you can put the same token just into the footer of individual pages. So it's a similar idea to Google Analytics. You mentioned Google Analytics. It also puts a tracking token either into the website footer or individual page footer, but it sends information into Google, whereas the ClickDimensions token sends the information to ClickDimensions. Make sense? Mm-hmm. What else have we got here? You can see that we do have email marketing. We also have other ways of communicating via text messages and social posts. We can also analyse social clicks. So you post something out on social media, that's what a social post is, but then if that post has links that can be clicked, ClickDimensions can capture the information of who clicked what when. There is even more. So some of this is the same as on the previous slide. Some of it is different. So we've got even more information that ClickDimensions is gathering to help us work up at the top of the funnel. So putting all of that into some sort of context, we've got the same suspects, and this is our marketing automation. Here, we've got various different ways of putting stuff out onto social media. And we've got the website. So this area of the slide is focusing on how can you raise brand awareness? How can you reach out to people who right now you don't know anything about them? In other words, you want to raise your brand to those people to generate some engagement. Now we've got a form. So this form probably sits either on a web page or in a social post, and we're asking people for some information, and they are voluntarily clicking on the submit button. So they are giving us that information. We can also SMS them. So ClickDimensions includes the functionality to bulk SMS. And of course, we can email them, and both the email and the SMS are, or can be, should be, personalized. So ClickDimensions can merge effectively any information that you've already got in your Dynamics database and can use that in an email, in an SMS, even in a survey. And the surveys that ClickDimensions supports can be dynamic in that if you already know something about a prospect, you don't need to re-ask the same question. So you could have a survey with, let's say, 12 questions on it, but you don't ask all 12 questions at once. The first time the person comes to that page, you would ask, for the sake of argument, the first 3 questions. The next time they return to that page, you ask another 3 or another set of questions. So you're building your knowledge of the prospect as they come back to the website.
Sorry, Jill, can you do that with forms as well? So I know you said you can do it with surveys. Let's say you're on a landing page on your website. Can you build a profile with a returning customer rather than them putting in their details?
Yes, you can. So the one exception is probably email address, because email address is what it's going to use to tie the various other bits of information together. But yes, you can do that with forms. In fact, in ClickDimensions, the difference between a form and a survey is really very small. Okay, so just to summarise, if you're in the awareness raising part of the marketing funnel, these are the things that you can do, and ClickDimensions can help with all of them. Once you've pulled the prospect down through, so they're beyond awareness raising and they're into the consideration, you then start using compelling emails, surveys, and SMSs. As you would expect, the emails are full, rich HTML. They support graphics, links, and a whole heap of other things that people would now expect to get within a marketing email. They also have unsubscribe functionality. So ClickDimensions supports the ability not only to unsubscribe from everything, But if you have a range of different newsletters that you send out, you can allow your prospect to subscribe to some and not others, depending on their interests. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do in and around this whole area. All of the things that we have covered can be tied together with campaign automation. And this is where we can set it up so it does become hands-off. So here we have a trigger. And the particular triggers used in this example are inviting somebody to an event or adding them manually into this campaign. Other possible triggers could be being added to a particular marketing list or clicking on a link. Once it has been triggered, we can then send them an email, and that is taking them to an event here. Notice here we've got two arrows. So these are the people who are positive. So these either reply yes or click on an appropriate link, but they do what we're deeming is the good thing. And the people that do that then get a further series of 3 emails, followed by 3 further emails running up to the event, and now we've got the actual event. If they attended the event, they now get a follow-up series. If they do what we don't really want them to do, in other words, they don't click, we'll set up a campaign response that is RSVP no, and then here, if they don't attend the event, we have a different follow-up series of emails for the people that don't attend. There's a lot of other things that we can do within the campaign automation function, but that just gives you an idea of some of the things that you can do. Perhaps the biggest thing that is missing as an example on this slide is the wait functionality. So you can have a particular step in the process that doesn't happen until either a certain amount of time has elapsed or a particular day or date is reached. Any questions about what I've done so far?
How's the A/B testing functionality?
A/B testing or split testing is done usually through emails, or
Does it have the functionality where it does like, so say you're sending 5,000 emails, or can it send 100 tests?
it does, and you
And then
can
it sends the winner.
configure.
Yeah.
So the way you do a split test email in ClickDimensions is you create the 2 emails, which are very similar but with one key difference. You link that to the relevant marketing list, so you know how many people are on the marketing list. You then tell it either the percentage or the number that you want to be in the test sample, the test group, and you tell it how long to wait. So there's another example of the timer before it sends the bulk. So to use your example, we've got a marketing list or a set of marketing lists with 5,000 contacts. We've got our 2 emails ready to go. We do 100, so typically it will be the first 100 on the marketing list, but again you can even configure that. It will send 100, split in whatever ratio you want, so it doesn't have to be 50-50. You can even vary that a little bit if you want. It then waits for a period of time so that it can measure the opens, the clicks, whatever. And based on what your success criteria were when you get to the end of that period of time, it then sends the other 4,900 emails, and they will all get either email A or email B, whichever got the better result out of the 100. So does that answer your question as to
Yep.
how that works?
And this sequence can also have a mix of emails and text messages that are all...
Yes, yes. So these in fact could be email or text messages or a mixture of both.
So you have the orientation
Sorry,
going.
can you only do the A/B testing through the email sending functionality, not through campaign automation? So in the scenario you just explained, that was from email sends.
Yes.
So that's a manual intervention. Can you do it through this phase, campaign automation?
I
Can you add another
don't
line and
believe
because
you can do split testing through the campaign automation.
I haven't tested it. I'm only asking.
No, knowing what I know about how you set up campaign automation, I don't know, I can't think how you would set it up so that the split test
You could
is
have
done.
two multiple lines going out, going to two different templates.
I can't think, just looking at the
This,
symbols
yeah,
we've
okay.
got, where the
So it's
actual
still
split
manual,
test would
okay.
come in. Now, you could frig it a little bit by, if we use the same numbers that we used earlier, we could do a manual send for 100, get the results, and then put the other 4,900 to go straight through. But I don't believe you could do a full-on automated split test within campaign automation. ClickDimensions can be and is used by a large number and a wide variety of different organisations. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to go through a few of them to give you some ideas of how different industries have used ClickDimensions. So manufacturers used the campaign automation feature for, I suppose it's a variant on onboarding, but they used emails that were triggered by somebody making a purchase of golf clubs, and that all kicked off a process that improved their customer engagement and specifically for them got the customers to book the preventative maintenance for their clubs. So the ongoing maintenance that golf clubs need was managed largely through a campaign automation. Associations are possibly one of the biggest users of this sort of technology, and they use the email and specifically the drag and drop email template editor to do membership renewals and a whole range of other things associated with boosting their membership level and membership retention. Banking and finance, as we heard from these gentlemen over here, they have used ClickDimensions for the customer onboarding and upselling. Again, campaign automation. Once you've got to a certain point, the next step just happens, whether that's an email or an SMS or whatever. Education institutions. These use a whole range of things, but particularly the web intelligence. So by being able to see which pages of a website a prospective student has visited and combining that with some of the forms where they can get download material, they can then have personalised emails or sending it out to a human being in a call centre who can have a very meaningful conversation about possible courses and a whole range of other things, because they know which web pages the student in question has visited, how long they spent on those web pages, the order that they went from one page to another. That's really, really useful information if you want to do any form of upselling. You can see where interest lies.
So how do you see what pages that lead visited before? Like at the moment we can only see on what page the lead form was submitted. So what other pages, how would I collect further information?
The way it works is based on IP address, and it works retrospectively. So prior to a particular lead filling in a form, you're right, you know very little about them. So you know that the IP address or the IP provider has visited a certain set of pages. But once they do fill in a form, you can then reverse engineer that the pages that were previously visited by that IP provider. Now that's particularly useful in the B2B environment, where an IP address is often mapped to an organisation. In the B2C environment, it is going to be a lot harder because a particular IP address is going to be shared by potentially a lot of people.
And different devices are being used
Sure.
as well.
Yeah. So I agree with you that I think the IP address is going to become less useful, but I don't know what's replacing it yet, while people do have, and this obviously isn't going to change in a hurry, a range of different devices and so on and so forth. So the ability to track it back is going to get harder.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Is there any functionality like lead scoring in there?
There is lead scoring.
Is that coming later, or is?
I am going to touch on it, but I'm certainly happy to tell you that ClickDimensions does include lead scoring, and it's done off by you assigning a score to the relevant pages and forms and surveys on a website, plus links and opening of an email and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So you work out the value of
Yeah.
each of those, and then it collates and then totals what a person does.
Okay, and then kind of pops up for the salesperson to
Whatever
follow up.
you need to happen.
Yeah.
So achieving a particular lead score could be a trigger for a campaign.
Yeah.
It could get passed to a salesperson's queue
Mm-hmm.
in some way, and there's probably other things that you can do with it.
Great.
Fast-moving consumer goods, so all of the stuff that we buy through the supermarket and a lot of other places, are another area where this sort of technology is useful. This particular example used the web intelligence to work out geographically where the most interest in the products was, based on which pages were being viewed where. And they then combined that with a form that was on a landing page that offered a free sample. And obviously the free sample wasn't absolutely totally free, because you had to give your email address in order to get the sample. And once you've handed over your email address, that can then be further marketed to. So this is all of the functionality that ClickDimensions contains. And I've grouped it by the sort of areas as we work down the funnel. So we've got landing pages, so specific pages that either Google AdWords or LinkedIn ads can go to. We've got web forms, surveys, and web intelligence. So they are the functionality that is useful very much at the top of the funnel. We've also got social marketing, event management, lead scoring, as I discussed, email and SMS communication, campaign automation, and reporting. At the beginning, when I went out and asked you people what you needed from your marketing automation in 2019, a number of you did flag that reporting and being able to pull the information together was one of the things that was important to you. Because ClickDimensions sits completely within Microsoft Dynamics 365, it has all of that reporting, and Power BI is just there for the use.
Sorry, Jill, what's web intelligence, and is that part of a certain subscription level, or is that generally
Okay.
out of...
Web intelligence is who has viewed which web pages.
So it should be part of the general ClickD package, or?
The only thing on here that is not part of ClickDimensions is the social marketing. That is a higher level of subscription, not much higher, but you can have ClickDimensions without social marketing, but everything else in there is part of ClickDimensions without the social add-on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just haven't seen web intelligence on my platform, that's why.
I think it's a label that you don't see inside ClickDimensions itself, but what you do have is the page views, the visits, and there's a third one, and it's...
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
That's all there, yeah.
That, yes.
Okay.
Now, they are the functions, if you like, within ClickDimensions that comprise web intelligence.
Okay, I'm with you.
That's why you haven't seen it.
Just a question for the
Sure.
text messages. So would the text message functionality be only one-way text message communication, or would it even be possible to set up, a sequence of emails, text messages that kind of say if you, answer this or answer that, and then it can kind of, it's like a bot functionality in between as well?
I think, but I'm not absolutely sure, that a lot of that is dependent on which of the SMS providers you are using for the SMS messaging. So ClickDimensions itself doesn't send SMSs, but there are 4 SMS providers that it works very closely with. And from what I recall, there are different levels of functionality within those providers. So depending on which one you go with would depend on whether the return SMS does work.
Okay.
So just to quickly run through the benefits of ClickDimensions. Firstly, it is completely dedicated to Dynamics 365. So if you are not using Microsoft Dynamics 365 as a CRM product, you can't use ClickDimensions. Part of the reason for that is it is totally native. So ClickDimensions itself doesn't really have a database. It leverages the Dynamics 365 database. All of the data that's generated via those various pink splodges that I showed you on the previous slide gets put into the Dynamics 365 database. So you don't have that valley that I talked about earlier with marketing automation over here, CRM over here, big hole in the middle that causes problems. There is only one database, and it is the Dynamics 365 database. It also has a wide breadth of functionality. In fact, for all of the products that do work with Dynamics 365, ClickDimensions has got the broadest functionality. It's the only product that works with Dynamics 365 that will do social posting and can pull the information following on from social posting back into the database, and therefore, of course, enable you to put your social post clicks into the same report as an email open, as a web page view, and so on type report. ClickDimensions works very well for both B2B and B2C. Again, that's one of the features of Dynamics 365. I think these numbers are out of date, and I think they are bigger than I've got on this slide, but I thought I won't go adding to them until I get it confirmed. But already, and the product's only existed for about 8 years, there are globally 4,000 organisations using ClickDimensions and over 600 partners to help those organisations across the globe. It also has very, very good value. So when you look at the breadth of functionality and the cost, it is probably the best of the options. So, any other questions? You have been asking questions as we've gone along, and that's great, but any other questions?
Just have one about how does it manage multiple communications to a customer? So can you tailor it so you can ensure someone doesn't receive 3 emails in a day, or
Yes.
if they get an offer, they don't get the next one for 2 months or something?
You can do that, and you do it by setting a window. So within a particular email, when you're setting that email up, one of the criteria that you can optionally build in is don't send if they've had another email within X days.
Yeah. And can you prioritise those? So if they fall into 2 streams, you can prioritise one and say, well, if they're in both, get this one first and get that one next.
I'm going to say yes, because there is so much that you can do, but I have to admit I've never actually seen how you would do that. And I'd really need to think through the logic and work out, well, where's the branch? What's the condition that we're creating to send group A down this path versus group B down that path?
Yeah.
Because you can build in branching, and more so than on the campaign automation slide that I had, but there is another component, I suppose, of campaign automation that is quite simply a branch. And when you add a branch to the campaign automation, you then add to that branch effectively the if statement. So something like, if last correspondence was more than a month ago, send them this way, else either no correspondence or send them this way. But that's the sort of logic. I suspect, being honest, the answer is going to be sometimes, because it is going to come down to the particular, what is my test that makes me want to send Group A versus Group B.
Yeah.
But I'd be very surprised if the answer was a bald no. But equally, it's probably not a global yes either.
Yeah. The other one is like, because Marketo is now being integrated with Dynamics, I believe. So how's that?
That's been an ongoing project for some time, and I don't know how successful it is. What I do know is Marketo does have its own database. So yes, I am sure, at least in theory, it is possible to share information, but we are sharing information between the Marketo database and the Dynamics 365 database. Whereas, because there is no ClickDimensions database, that is not necessary. Another point that I find interesting when I'm doing this sort of presentation is you might have noticed that at no point as a feature or a function of ClickDimensions did I talk about marketing lists. The reason for that is, strictly speaking, ClickDimensions doesn't have marketing lists. However, Dynamics 365 does have marketing lists, and ClickDimensions leverages those marketing lists. And the beauty of that compared to the majority, if not 100%, of other marketing automation that will work with Dynamics 365 customer engagement is those same marketing lists can be used outside of ClickDimensions. So we could build a marketing list for, say, pure customer service, and that same marketing list could then be used for a pure marketing or sales or anything else function. So even the relatively new Dynamics for Marketing does not have that functionality. So I think ClickDimensions is the only marketing automation tool that uses the Dynamics 365 marketing lists.
What does it cost?
What does
it cost?
ClickDimensions?
Yeah.
It costs around $650 per month.
Okay.
But that's org-wide. And I have to quote it in US dollars because my ability, well, we should go to our banking friends to get a conversion. But obviously the price in Australian dollars varies on the exchange rate because it is priced in US dollars. Although I understand that they are putting together an Australian price list.
Yeah, okay. Is that...
But you need Dynamics as well.
Oh yes, you do need.
So that's an additional cost, right?
It only works with Dynamics,
Yeah.
yes.
So if you're a Dynamics user, then it makes sense.
Mm.
If you know what I mean.
Well, we are Microsoft Dynamics user,
Yeah.
but I don't think we have 365. I think we have an older version at the
We
moment.
can help you.
ClickDimensions, in fact, will work right the way back to CRM 2011.
Oh, really?
Yes. So this presentation, because of where we are in 2019, yada, 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 was talking about Dynamics 365. But ClickDimensions works on a lot of other versions of the product. So Dynamics CRM. Yeah, they're all Dynamics CRM. Yes, Microsoft CRM without the word Dynamics in it is so old, I think you would struggle to find. And in fact, that slide that I had on the second slide where I showed you the home page of the first version of Microsoft CRM, that was incredibly hard to find. It took me a lot of Googling to find.
We were laughing because it looks like the one we're using now.
Oh wow.
What, Dynamic or Microsoft CRM?
It's another system, but yeah, it had a similar looking screen.
Okay. Well, maybe you should talk to all of us and solve your problems, but, so. Okay.
I couldn't imagine not being able to access my CRM system anytime, anywhere. Like, for example, if you're using on-premise.
Oh no, if you're using on-premise, you can still access it anywhere, anyhow.
I know, but like with your marketing automation tool, like just to get things out the door a lot quicker.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Takes me like 8 hours to put a newsletter together.
Oh, wow.
Well, that depends, and it also,
Yes,
you
what's
see,
the
there
percentage of
are,
the read rate?
there are some
Very high.
people.
Oh, there you go.
No, that's a
Thank you
very,
so much.
very woolly, that if you were writing all of the content for a newsletter and putting it together in 8 hours, I would argue that's pretty good. But if by putting it together you've already got the content and it's a case of, well, I want that bit there and that bit there and this image in there, and that's taking you 8 hours, I'd be a little concerned.
But the thing with ClickD is it's got templates that you can drag and drop, so you can
Yes.
upload your template and just add the content.
Yeah.
So it stays
Absolutely. It's got, and you probably know this, but it's got 4 different styles of editor, starting with the drag and drop, which is very easy to use, but it has some limits right the way through to, if you're braver than me, you can go and cut your own HTML from woe to go, and
Thanks, Reece.
so on and so forth. So you've got, depending on where you sit on your willingness to do that sort of technology, there are 5 different email editors that you can use. Just to finish up before I get booed off by Praveen, I am ClickDimensions certified, and I would certainly be happy to help any of you if you think that is appropriate. And even if that's not appropriate, if you would like to keep in touch with me, you'll notice I have put some stay connected forms on the tables, and I've also given many people business cards. And I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I would love to stay in touch with you. And I will now hand back to Praveen.
Thank you.